I've been making these videos and trying to help new game masters for a while, but now I figure like it's time to tell you where I came from and how I got into this great hobby of tabletop role-playing games. Hey fellow game masters, I'm Richard Quiner and welcome back to the channel where today we're just going to go a little bit into my backstory and my history of tabletop role-playing games and how it's impacted my life over the last couple years. The reason I'm doing this is that because whenever there's a new voice in a space, it's always nice to know where they came from or why they care about a specific hobby, especially something like nerd-related activities, just like tabletop role-playing games or video gaming. It's always nice to know where they're coming from and why they're getting into a certain space, making videos, making content like this. So I wanted to share that with you and where I came from originally. Now, my experience with tabletop role-playing goes back to about the time I was 7 years old, when my brother brought home a book of the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game rules, and we sat around, we made some characters, and we played a little bit. I remember very vividly the book had like the dwarf was headbutting an orc, and the orc was drawn a little funny, it looked weird. It didn't make a lot of sense as art, but it looked awesome, and the dwarf had its mohawk, and it was great, and we got into it. We more focused on playing the game and doing the combat, and my brother, who was only a teenager at the time, was kind of running the game, and that was about all we did. We played once, and then that was it. It like disappeared into the night. I think he took it back to the library. I believe my parents weren't a big fan of this idea of being violent and playing this kind of game, I think. But I was only 7, so I don't really remember. But that was like the first and last time I had heard about tabletop role-playing game for a very, very long time. I was living in Alaska when I was in high school, and I discovered we had a geek store in town, kind of a comic shop, and I discovered they had the books of Rifts. Now, Rifts is a system from Palladium Books that is considered a megaverse, in which that means it's basically every book, almost every book is like a planet or a different system, and there's hundreds of books, and there's hundreds of planets, there's tons of information, and it's like a universe built in, where, you know, D&D is like a planet or one world at a time or one continent at a time. Rifts that was it. It was huge, massive, hundreds of different races, hundreds of different classes you could play, tons of different items. You had things running from magic all the way up to science fiction technology. It was a lot to take in. And I found Rifts and I fell in love with this game type, this system. But here's the thing though, I was this dorky, nerdy kid in high school who I had some friends. We played hacky sack in the hallway all the time, but I never took the step to say, hey, do you guys want to try this book out or try playing this game? So what happened is I read a lot of the books, but I never actually played. I just kind of sat there, I read the books, I would get the books and I would read them and I would learn more about Rifts and the worlds that they were building, and I got really into it that way. And it was more just like reading novels to me. I figured I wasn't ever going to play this because I was like, I'm this nerdy kid, I'm not going to have friends that want to play this game with me. And because of that, I also didn't really pay attention to the mechanics of the game. Like, I could not tell you how Rifts is played to this day. I can remember some, details about story moments or different kind of character design aspects, but I can't tell you the mechanics of the game. I don't know anything about that. I paid attention to the stories that were told in the books and the information about that, and I really did enjoy that. But that was my high school foray into tabletop role-playing games. Fast forward a couple more years later, I'm in college. Scratch that. Fast forward even a couple more years, I'm out of college, but I'm working out of college, and a couple of the students who I had this weird thing where I went to the college, and then as soon as I graduated, I started working there. And so I still had friends who were students at the school that I worked at. So it came up one day in conversation, hey, let's play D&D. One of my friends said he would be the DM. We were playing 4th edition. We found the character creator online. We got our characters made. And then I was probably the worst player imaginable. Not because I was bad at role-playing, but because at that point in time in my life, I just didn't care. And it's one of my bigger regrets looking back and now how I feel about role-playing games and like the interest I have and stuff. And I look back and I'm like, I just wasted, a lot of time there when I could have been paying more attention and getting more into the game and really enjoying myself as a role player, and I could have learned to be a DM a lot sooner than I did. I'm saying I was a bad player, and it was basically because I missed a lot of the games. Like, they were holding games every weekend. They were hosting a game. I wasn't going all the time. I was a single guy who worked a job. I could have been there all the time had I really wanted to, but at the time I wasn't invested. So I missed a lot of games, and when I did show up, I wasn't exactly present. I tried to be sometimes during combat. I didn't try to be the guy on my Facebook all the time, but I would find myself on my Facebook a lot. So I was that player. I was that guy in this game. And I look back and I regret it, and I'm like, you know what? I was the problem in this situation. And I could have, just walked away and not have been a problem player. I could have done a lot of things differently, but I didn't. And then we stopped. Like, that game kind of died. And I know it was a homebrew. I know, like, my buddy had created all this stuff from kind of scratch, and it was his world, and it was kind of cool. And when I really look back on it, I was like, he tried. And I just didn't accept that, and I kind of regret that moment. Yeah, so this is like one of the first times I'm admitting that I regret what I did back then. I regret it. But fast forward a couple more years, I get a new job, I'm at a new place. Some of my coworkers discover that they have a mutual interest in D&D. One of them was on this stream, like a kind of a stream that was happening, and the other one just played a lot. And they made that connection, and I was really good friends with the one who was on the stream. So they discovered each other by accident. Like, I think one was walking down the hall and looked in the office of the other one and saw the player handbook sitting there, and then that started the conversation. And they figured that out, and then they said, hey, we're gonna start a game, you want to play? And I was like, yeah, I'll try it out. And so this time we were doing 5th edition D&D, and I had decided to approach this game a lot differently than the last one. I had heard stories, I had seen the streams, I knew it could be better than the experience I had made it for my game master previously. So I approached this one differently, and I decided I was gonna go all in as I could at the time. So when we first started playing, and this was kind of the moment of change for me, was we first got to this session, and I think there was like 9 players. I could be mistaken. I'm still playing in that same campaign now, but this was like 2 years ago. There were about 9 players, but the feeling at the table was everyone was in, or like 90% of the people were in, and we were ready to go. And the game started, and it was really fun, and the game master kept the thing interesting and was very descriptive and entertaining. And the players, we also tried our best to make it entertaining. I put in my effort to be attentive at the table, to understand what was going on, know my character, know what he could do, and that changed everything. That change of mindset for me made me say, like, oh, this is actually really fun and really cool, and I really enjoy this. I want to continue doing this. And now, 2 years later, I'm still playing in that campaign. We're level 9. We're level 9 now. And I'm running my own games, and I'm being a game master, and I'm making this content, trying to promote other game masters to help people learn to play. So getting into game mastering was about a year later, when I was just hanging out with some of the friends, some of the same people that I played with in college. We were talking, and they were like, we like to play D&D again. And they knew I was playing in 5th edition. And then I was like stubborn, so I said, no, I don't really want to do 4th edition, but I would do 5th edition. And I agreed right then and there to run a game in 5th edition. And then they said, okay. And at first I chickened out. I wanted to turn around and be like, oh, never mind. But I fought all my urges that I had to do that, because you get those urges sometimes. Everyone gets the urges where you agree to something and then you're like, nah, I shouldn't do that. But then you push back, you push through it, and then you run your game. And that's what I did. I pushed through, I planned my session, I ran my game, and I just had a really good time. Like, the first time being a dungeon master and seeing, I think I had 6 players at the first session, and they did well. Like, we all got into it. They were having fun. It took them a little bit. They were a little slow in terms of role-playing stuff, but everyone is when they're first getting started in a new group. And now we're here. We still play a year later, and they are great role players. They really get into the moments. And even though I get frustrated because they always ruin my story, they're still a great people to play with, and I do enjoy it. And I want everyone to find that, which is why I started this channel. There was a thing I saw as I was learning how to be a game master and doing my research, and I saw all these channels, and everyone had been playing for a very, very long time. You have things like Matthew Colville, and there was Andrew from Dawnforge Cast, and there's other guys like the Nerdarchy guys, a bunch of people who had been playing for a very long time. And as I was looking for the topics, because the way my brain works, I have to break stuff down really small increments. And I was looking for topics that I couldn't find the answer to my questions. Things like, what kind of notes do I need to have? How much do I need to read before I run a session? Like, how do I know if I'm prepared enough? How do I know if I'm too prepared? All these thoughts were coming in, and I couldn't find all the information I wanted at that point that worked for me. So I decided, after I got more comfortable with it, I said, you know what, I'm going to start helping or trying to help other new people who might not have been in the game since they were children. And so I like to think me having a newer kind of perspective on things and a different mindset of how things work, I can possibly give some different advice to people. And you know what, the great thing with YouTube, I can make these videos, and if they get watched or not, it's all fine. They're out there. If I make a video and 10 years later someone watches it, cool. I'm cool with that. So the whole point of this channel for me has been in the hopes of convincing other people to try tabletop role-playing games, regardless of the system. Like you noticed, I only really played D&D so far. I am learning the Pathfinder playtest. I'm reading through the books. I have the new Warhammer 40k role-playing game. I have one from Elite Dangerous. I have the D&D 5th edition science fiction reskin. I got Starfinder. I'm reading all these books, trying to absorb all this knowledge and trying to impart it to other people. So you, the new game master, the new person who's never experienced this before, can find the information you need to continue playing the game, or to just get started, to make it more fun. And for the more experienced game masters, I like to look at things and say, you know what, I'm just presenting a different perspective. It might be the same perspective that you have, but this is my perspective of it, and I'm sharing it. So I hope you find some value in this channel in that sense, because that's why I'm here, that's why I'm making these videos and taking all the time and, trying to make this something. In addition to that, I'm looking to get into the more creative side of building settings. I want to build a city, I want to build a world, I want to build a campaign setting. I want to do more creative in terms of publishing and make things available for you to use in your own things, which is why I'm trying to come up with some other things. I'm building a website now, it's in progress, but adding more onto it to make something that can benefit the gaming community as a whole through creative means, training means, and so forth. So that's kind of the nutshell. That's the big nutshell around this channel. So I hope that gives you some insight of what I'm doing here, what I'm trying to accomplish, and I hope you can use this channel to help yourself learn how to play role-playing games and get into the wonderfully fantastic hobby that is tabletop role-playing. So I've been Richard Quiner. Thank you for watching.